Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris here with you for another week. How are you, my friend?
Doing well, sir. Doing well. This is exciting times. We're getting closer and closer. We're just about 2 months out from seeing Beast in Black headline day 2 of Prog Power USA, and the only question is which one of us is more excited.
I, having never seen them, might take the prize, and this week definitely didn't hurt that cause. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I know people are sometimes questioning why we're doing career retrospectives on bands that have 3 albums, but the reality is we have a festival that we're preparing for in one regard. Number 2, I think that in addition to Amy's request from last week, I think this is just a real fitting choice. Plus, we have some Prog Power related stuff coming by way of interview and other things. So I just think it's extremely timely. But we will get to Beast in Black in due time. I wanted to first take a minute and just thank all the new patrons who signed up. We really appreciate the support. For those of you who are hearing the show for the first time, check the links below. We do have a Patreon where we offer bonus episodes and other content that I think most will enjoy. So consider a pledge, helping the cause and helping us continue as we go ever closer to 200 episodes, which is nuts, but we will hit it in very short order, definitely within the next few months. So there's that. And just a number of albums came out this week, some good, some not so good. And I just wanted to mention a few of them because I thought it was definitely timely. Our friends over at the MSR cast, Carrie and Sean, mentioned an album, or I should say a song by a band that I had never heard of before. And the band is called Oblivion Protocol. Never heard of these guys. And this is coming from a huge Threshold fan. But it's actually another side project by Richard West. And if you like Threshold, I assure you, you will enjoy Oblivion Protocol. This is like very much in the same vein, almost surprising that they came out with this, release or single or what have you, just because it sounds so much like, Threshold in many ways, but really good stuff. I look forward to the full release of this album. Right now, they just have a single for, I believe, a song called This Is Not a Test, and another single for a song called Forests in the Fallout. If you like prog metal, check these guys out.
Nice. I will do just that.
Cool, awesome. And then another is staying in the prog realm, a band that I've just been raving about for some time out of Mexico called Anima Tempo came out with a new album called Chaos Paradox. This is a little gentler than I typically like, but this is just so well done and it's so well produced, and the songs are quite frankly just so emotional in many respects that it's just really, really catching all the right, hitting the right spots for me. For those that have never, heard of the band, I'm gonna share some of their music this week on our social media pages. Definitely worth checking them out as well. Just really, really solid release. And I feel like they should be a lot more popular than they are. So I just wanted to give them a shout out on this podcast. They're from Mexico. And finally, I think it's probably the most ambitious album that I've ever heard in my life. And that's not to say that it was very good, but one of the most ambitious albums I've ever heard. And I had heard of this, and I actually got a message from one of our patrons about this band called Max Enix. I don't even know how to describe what this is. I think it's been described as cinematic symphonic metal. That is... I'm not sure that description even does this justice. The amount of people that are involved in this project, for lack of a better word, is absolutely staggering. It's a double album. It's called Far From Home. I think it clocks in at just under 3 hours of music. I mean, it is a massive undertaking. And there's not that many songs. There's only like 14 songs, but almost every song is like 10 or 15 minutes. And one of the songs is like 25 minutes. It was almost a chore to get through this thing, but I almost recommend that people check it out just because it's absolutely insane. And Max Enix not only does part of the vocals, but he does the story and the outline of this thing. And there are enough guest vocalists on this album to just completely overwhelm in many ways. I mean, everybody from Damian Wilson, Lance King, David Reedman, just to name a few. It is something else. I'm tempted to post a song off this, but again, for some reason, the sum of the parts was not as good as the whole on this one, and it just never grabbed me. And I almost felt like it was a chore listening to this thing, but it was, again, the most ambitious thing I've ever heard.
Hey, who doesn't like chores?
Yeah, that's all I got. Anything on your end?
Not really. I've really been listening to Beast in Black more than anything else, and I did go in and I realized we had been a little bit neglectful of our playlists on Spotify, so I went in and updated all of those. I have 13 of them for this year so far, and you have 7, so we have... I know that your last 3, I think, were not uploaded, so I took care of that, and my last
thank you
4 or 5, I think, I hadn't gotten up, including the Volume 13, which I just completed recently, mostly songs that we've already discussed, like the Mark Hudson solo album and the new Amaranth single and things of that nature. So I don't really have much to say beyond that, but definitely recommend checking those out. And that's pretty much it. This has been a very beastly kind of week for me, and it was very enjoyable, I will say.
And for those that don't know, this band, Beast in Black, relatively new band, formed in 2015, and is kind of out of the shadows of another band that's not only playing prog power, but has Beast in their name, and that's Battle Beast. And it's really, I guess, like the brainchild of Anton Kabanen, who founded the band like back in 2015, as I mentioned. So this band has not been around for 10 years, and yet I will go so far as to say I think they are going to be huge. They are just kind of scratching the surface of their potential after 3 albums, not so much in terms of the quality of the music, but just in terms of, I think, their popularity. If they hit a home run with their next album, they are going to absolutely explode. They're doing U.S. headlining tours at this point, playing festivals all throughout Europe. The best is yet to come, I think, in many ways for this band. And I'll just kind of go through the members before we, kind of get into it. Kasperi Heikkinen on rhythm guitar, Matt Molnar on bass. Ever since 2018, it's been Ate Palakangis on drums, and the one and only Yannis Papadopoulos on vocals. I don't know what hasn't been said about this guy over the last 10 years, but we'll get to Yannis in a little bit. When did these guys first get on your radar? Because I kind of remember when their debut album came out, and I remember picking it up. Did you know about them from the start, or did you know about Battle Beast first? How did this kind of play out for you?
I feel like I found out about both bands around the same time, oddly enough. Even though Battle Beast had been around a lot longer, they formed in 2008. And Anton was part of the trio that created Battle Beast. And I'm not going to pretend like I know the inner workings of why he left the band that he started to start another band. I can only presume it was due to creative differences, as that usually tends to be the case. Battle Beast is still the same, basically the same lineup, minus Anton, obviously, and also their Nora was not their original vocalist. Actually, Nite Valo was their original vocalist. I believe she only sang on their debut album Steel, and then the self-titled album Battle Beast that came out in 2013 was when Nora had joined, and she's been in the band ever since. So that band has remained basically the same. Then Battle Beast, Beast in Black gets started in 2015. That band has remained basically the same. The only change was in the drummer. Their old drummer was Sami Heinonen. I love these Finnish names. They trip me up every time.
It's like an NHL All-Star team.
For real, yeah. Where's Teemu Selanne? So I can't remember what was first, because for me, Battle Beast was Bringer of Pain was the album that really got me into them, and that came out literally the same year as Beast in Black's debut album, Berserker. I do remember exactly what brought Beast in Black to my attention, and it was the music video to Blind and Frozen. And I don't know if I wasn't watching the video and just listening to it, but I was convinced I was listening to a female vocalist on those verses, and come to realize that is just the one and only Giannis. Just his range is incredible, and I've mentioned it before, but if you haven't, do yourself a favor and look up his cover of Ghost Love Score by Nightwish. It's pretty amazing hearing a male singer sing that song that well, and in the same octave or the same key as Floor and Tarja before her. But anyway, I really liked that song, and I think that I grabbed the album because of that, and I remember liking the album a good bit, but it was the second album that really blew me away. And to be honest with you, I kind of forgot about the first album, and now going back and listening to it a few times, I think it deserved a little bit more love than I gave it initially. But we'll get into that when we get into it. But what was your recollection of getting into the band?
I was never as much of a Battle Beast fan as you were or are, and I want to start there. So I was not familiar at all with Anton's work in that band because I had just never listened to them, and I first heard them around the same time as you did in 2015, but I distinctly remember hearing Beast in Black first, so I kind of did this out of order in many respects. When that debut album came out, I remember a lot of people going absolutely bananas for it. And they just were like, you have to hear this band, Beast in Black, Berserker, not a John Nord tribute, but nonetheless, this, you're making me laugh. But nonetheless, like, this album was something I had to hear. And I've listened to that album quite a few times over the last 8 years. And I had a similar experience to you this week. It's much better than I remembered it, but I have to be honest with you. I never saw what other people saw in that debut. It's good. It has some great songs on it. And then there's a lot of material which just sounds like second-rate power metal to me. So when their second album was due out, and this would just be a few years later in 2019, I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm going to check it out because I liked enough of the first album that I was curious. But I don't think I was prepared for what that album ultimately was. And that album, simply put, was like one of the best albums I had heard in a long, long, long time. And it was my album of the year in 2019. And I was just blown away by kind of the change in style, really, that they went for on that album. And then when they released Dark Connection 2 years after that, it was kind of picking up where they left off. And it was about as admirable a follow-up as they could have, given how much I like that second album. So that's kind of my history with the band. I still struggle with Battle Beast. I assure you I have seen them live, and I will probably stay for their set at Prague Power. I just don't, it just doesn't click for me for some reason. But these guys, I am so excited to see. And this obviously on the heels of Ad Infinitum, which I think will be a fun show. But this is the band I am looking forward to seeing most on a big stage. I just think this band oozes potential, and I'm curious to see where they go from here.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because to me, like, I've heard people say that the two bands are very similar, and I
don't hear it.
I don't either. And part of the reason for that is because I don't really know the first three Battle Beast albums that Anton was on all that well. I'm very familiar with their last three albums, which he did not really have much to do with. I don't know. There might have been some lingering songwriting that was on Bringer of Pain. I absolutely loved Bringer of Pain. And I also really loved Circus of Doom. I thought No More Hollywood Endings was a bit of a drop off, because I think they got a little experimental and it didn't always work. I feel like Circus of Doom, they kind of got back on the track. But Bringer of Pain, I still think that King for a Day is one of the best power metal songs I've heard in the last 10 years. But it's an album I go back to and I really enjoy, and the band just kicks so much ass live. So yeah, we're probably going to talk a little bit about Battle Beast as this episode goes on, because they kind of go hand in hand, but I don't really find that the bands have a ton in common. The vocalists are totally different. There's a little bit of that kind of that really driving synth sound, I think, definitely shows up on both, but I think the songwriting definitely differs, and how that synth sound is used. So I'm just glad it's interesting, because like I've heard people compare the two bands, and for you to say you like one and don't love the other kind of shows that maybe they're not as similar as some people would argue.
And maybe I need to hear the first few Battle Beast albums. I've never heard them, but they don't sound anything like Now, in my opinion. If you look at the last three albums, I don't hear it.
Yeah,
but
and honestly, the songs I do know from the first three albums don't scream Beast in Black. Like Beast in Black to me has more of a modern sound, whereas those first three Battle Beast albums were a little bit more old school traditional metal. But again, I'm not basing that on a ton of research and listening, so that's just my thoughts. But how about this for a little bit of trivia? The last four Battle Beast albums were number one in Finland, and the first Beast in Black album was number 7, and the last two Beast in Black albums were also number 1 in Finland. So they're incredible. A big deal in Finland.
But to their credit, have been doing well in the rest of the world as well. I mean, they've been charting in many countries, not least of which here in America. I think they actually charted with their last album, which is saying something. And again, I just think they're scratching the surface. They are relentless on the touring circuit, and I think that is all paying dividends. To say nothing of the fact that the music, by and large, has gone in almost a pop-like direction. Obviously, it's not. It's more of a melodic metal, almost a power metal sound. But I just think it's very, very accessible and something that someone can put on and just listen to without having to, delve deep into their inner consciousness to gravitate towards some of this stuff. But I'll say this. A number of these tracks remind me of I'll save it. But a number of these tracks remind me of something, and I'll kind of just let that marinate for a bit. And when I say that, I think it's more so on the latter two albums. But let's get into Berserker. Let's talk November 3rd, 2017. This album comes out. They quote unquote burst onto the scene, and they waste no time, I guess, by starting with their namesake, the Beast in Black, is the first song that you hear from these guys. What immediately struck out as I went back to listen to this is that in-your-face production, where the keys are just so noticeable and really just are kind of the driving force behind not only this song but many songs. And the drums are almost like secondary in terms of driving the beat on a lot of this stuff. I think the keyboards really do a fantastic job. And but this song that they start out with, kind of average. Not my favorite song, and it's like I know that the songwriting gets better, but to me, this is more of like a straight up power metal tune in many ways. And while it's good, it's not mind blowing.
I think it's one of the better songs on the album, personally.
Okay.
I think it just kicks things off with a lot of high energy. You're getting a taste of what Giannis's vocals have to offer. He does like, he can do like this unbelievably high, clean vocal, and then also like a kind of a very powerful, almost raspy kind of vocal as well. Just a very all around talented guy. But this has everything. Like, has the just the pounding double bass drums, the fast guitars, the sweeping keyboard orchestrations. I think this is a beast, no pun intended. It's just a great song to kind of kick things off. And I find that some of the songs on this album that I really gravitate towards are kind of in this sort of style where it's just all balls to the wall pretty much from the get-go.
I can appreciate that. I do think the guitar work on this opening track is amongst some of their best guitar work on any of their songs. That being said, I am partial to the second track, Blind and Frozen. This song to me is kind of what the band would ultimately become in many ways with their second album, From Hell with Love. And I think that's part of the reason I love this track as much as I do. The verses in many ways are almost like a vocal solo, just kind of showing off Giannis's vocal range. And then all of a sudden, it's just kind of over the drums and the keyboard. And then the chorus. God, it's such a catchy chorus that I just hope they play the song live because I want to sing along to that chorus. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of nowhere, there's this like very regal sounding keyboard solo. But there's something so accessible about this song. To me, it's one of, if not the best song on the album.
Yeah, this was their very first single, and I think it was a good choice. I think it really got a lot of people's attention right off the bat. And you know, here's another really interesting fact, and I'm going to pull it up so I make sure I have my numbers correctly. But this music video has 41 million views on YouTube.
That's a lot. That's incredible.
Yep, and you know, we've talked about the charismatic voice, Elizabeth Jaroff. She covered this song, and I'm trying to remember if I watched her review of it. I can imagine she was probably pretty floored by Giannis's vocals. But yeah, this was a big hit. Like, you know, for right off the bat, 41 million views. That's pretty damn impressive, if you ask me. So
almost as much as our last episode, but you know, a little bit more work from these guys, and I think they could go somewhere.
Yeah. I think the Berserkers got a real future in the business, but it's impressive, and yeah, I agree with everything you had to say about it. I think when I first heard the song, I almost thought it was a little gimmicky that he was singing like that, and then over the years I've learned to realize it's just he does it because he can. But yeah, I agree that there's definitely carryover onto the second album, and this is kind of that more of it's still a pretty fast song. It's mid tempo compared to the previous song, but it kind of has more of a marching beat to it. But yeah, great song, and every time I check YouTube to see how many views it has, I'm blown away how the number just keeps growing. It's a lot like our Fighting the World Manowar episode on YouTube. Can't believe that many people actually listen to it. So yeah, it still blows my mind. 41 million. That's incredible. Outstanding.
What do you think of Blood of a Lion? I think it's always hard to find yourself coming after a track like Blind and Frozen, but what do you think of Blood of a Lion, the third track?
I really like this song too. I think it's kind of similar in tempo to the previous song. Maybe not as like radio friendly is probably the wrong term, but more just accessible, I guess, or just a way to like. I think Blind and Frozen was the perfect song to just suck in brand new fans with. This is more, I think, of a kind of just traditional mid-tempo rocking power metal song. I really like it. I think the chorus is really catchy. Giannis does some really high vocals here, which I guess shouldn't be all that surprising at this point, but I think it's another really solid tune. I think they're easily have gone 3 for 3 on these first 3 tracks.
I don't like it as much as the first two. And since I didn't love the opening track, I guess I don't like this track as much either. I think it has this like march-like quality to it, but then almost the verses sound like a ballad in many ways. It's kind of soft and unopposing, very unassuming, and it leads to what's otherwise, I guess, a kind of a big chorus, if you will. I just felt it was somewhat uninspired, and I think it would be better served towards the end of the disc. I don't know. Like, again, I would say it's a victim of the albums that came ahead of it. But at the same time, I had these same thoughts when I first heard the album in the first place. So I guess I'm consistent, if nothing else. And I do think that overall this album is better than I remembered it. But it's not. It's not, and apparently will never be an album that just blows me away. And we'll talk about Born Again, which is the fourth track. I think this is better. And if you like keyboards, this is certainly your jam. It's a lot of pianos and keyboards. And again, a very powerful chorus building on what's otherwise kind of slower and unassuming verses. What I like is that there's like these random key changes throughout the song, and the drum beat, which kind of just keeps it in check and keeps the whole thing on track. But in many ways, this song benefits from what I call the Daniel Hyman effect, which is taking a decent song and putting amazing vocals on the top, and all of a sudden you have magic, right? Like that's the new, that's the formula. Get Daniel Hyman, write mediocre music, and you have a good album. See Sacred Outcry, and I'll footnote that. That's what Born Again is to me. Is the vocals are so good here that I like the song better.
Well, we had a song about John Nord, and now we have one about Matt Bourne, so we're doing good. Yeah, Zod the Immortal Hulk Hogan coming up next, but I don't know. I like this song a lot too. I think it's another one of the more mid-tempo type songs. It feels a little bit more emotional than I think the previous songs, but I think it's another really solid tune. Like, I don't think that like these songs to me like are just, most of them don't have the consistency that the songs on the next album do, but they're still very good. It's almost just a shade below what they would do on the next album. It is kind of hard to remember in a vacuum how I felt about this album without having that feeling of so much love for the second album. But I think this song is good too. This was another single as well that also has 15 million views on YouTube, and also was reviewed by the Charismatic Voice. So clearly she's a fan. And the song Beast in Black, not to be outdone. Well, it's outdone a little bit, but it has 7 million hits on YouTube. So all these big singles really got a lot of play on YouTube, which is nice to see, because like, I don't know that I would have guessed that Beast in Black had that much reach, being so early in their tenure, but sure enough, they do. Your thoughts on General Zod the Immortal?
Straight up power metal, very much reminds me of like Painkiller by Judas Priest. This is something Primal Fear could have written. The verses are a bit goofy, but at the same time, I kind of like the song. It's endearing. I think it's actually one of the better tracks on the album. I would put it in the top half of songs on the album, but there's a song coming up that I love a lot more, but it's good. And if you like that classic Judas Priest sound, I think you're going to love this song. Well said.
I remember not thinking much about this song. This was one of the ones that really grew on me in the last week of going back and listening to it. It's just really crunchy, and like you said, just kind of has that Judas Priest, Primal Fear, like just that kind of that really just deliberate power metal vibe. It's a really solid tune. I like it a lot. It was also a single. Only 2.4 million views on YouTube, however. So
weak.
Yeah, Zod's bringing up the rear on this one.
We get to a track called The Fifth Angel, and it's kind of like the end of side A of the album. they employ like a spoken word intro, which is something we haven't really heard from them before. Obviously, very prominent keys. To me, this is not a very memorable song, and I just think that is a testament to the songwriting, which would improve as time would go on. The vocals, top notch, fantastic, but the song itself, kind of forgettable. Not really my favorite, and I can see why it's kind of buried in the middle of this thing.
Yeah, I have to agree with you.
Well, don't sound so upset about it. I mean,
I hate when I have to agree with you on stuff. Yeah, I think that there's a little bit of a lull in the middle of this album here. There's also kind of a weird thing where like two of the tracks are considered bonus tracks that are within the 12 tracks. And I think it's only because there's like vinyl versions of the album that are missing those tracks. But like, I think almost all of the digital or CD versions have those tracks. So I don't know. I was having a hard time trying to come up with a rating. Like, do I want to take those songs into consideration or not? This isn't one of them though. This just happens to be one of the, I think, weaker of the, if not the non B-sides, but it's probably towards the bottom of my favorite songs on the album. It's not a bad song, but it's just kind of average, I guess.
So I totally hear what you're saying, and I kind of included those two bonus tracks, if you will, as part of the review of this album. But before we get to some of those tracks, talk to me about Crazy, Mad, Insane, because this song has a different feel than the rest of the songs that we've discussed.
So do you feel like this song is kind of a little bit of a preview to the third album? Because the third album has a bit more of this kind of techno kind of vibe to it, electro vibe, and this seems like it's almost like a little bit of a preview of that.
Absolutely. It absolutely has that kind of a vibe. It almost sounds like the drums are electronic in certain ways. That being said, at the time, right, for this album, I have in my notes like original. This track is different, but really, really good. The chorus is super catchy. The sound samples in the instrumental section sound great. You can't not like this. And I'll tell you who comes to mind when I hear songs like this. Voyager. This to me is what Voyager sounds like, albeit less proggy when Beast in Black does it. I love this song. It's probably one of my top two songs on the entire album. And again, I guess the songs that I seem to have chosen from this album are the ones that were a precursor to the second and third album. So you can kind of see where my head's at. But I love this song.
Yeah, agreed 100%. It's this perfect marriage of power metal and dance music, really. Great stuff. And it's they really go more into this kind of vibe on the third album, and we'll talk about that. But like you said, like there's these little hints of what's to come on the next couple of albums here. Really, really good tune, super catchy. It's definitely has that earworm quality, and I definitely appreciate the Voyager connection there.
And I on the heels of that, again, very difficult to follow it up, and they don't even really try. They put a bonus track after that, and they put a song called Hell for All Eternity. This one's a little spooky sounding and almost ominous at the beginning. And then all of a sudden, Giannis starts screaming, and that's the end of that. Everything kind of kicks in after he lets out a primal scream. It's a simple, catchy riff. I don't think the verses are particularly enjoyable, but the chorus definitely catchier. And even the orchestration on this one is something that stands out to me. I'm actually I would say this is probably in the top third of songs for me on the album. Maybe third or fourth favorite on the album. But I think in comparison to the material that would come out later, it's still weaker by comparison. Good song, maybe very good, but not great.
Right. I never really felt like any of these songs felt like B-sides or bonus tracks or whatever. Whereas
I didn't know that until you mentioned it, to be honest with you. I thought it was just part of the album proper.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always did too until I looked it up, and it was like, I guess just certain editions, particularly the vinyl editions, don't have Hell for All Eternity and Go to Hell. So anything with hell involved, which is ironic because the next album would have hell in its title. But I don't know. I think it's a really pretty solid tune, and to me, like the bonus tracks on the next two albums are all, there's 4 bonus tracks. They're all covers. So they, in and of themselves, feel like outliers. Whereas these two, whether they're bonus tracks or not, these 2 tracks don't really feel like outliers. They feel like they belong on the album. The fact that they weren't just slapped onto the end, I think says something. I don't know that they're true bonus tracks, but I guess that they're considered extra songs, depending on which medium you have this album on. But I consider all 12 tracks to be part of the Berserker experience. Either that or being thrown out over the top rope and getting counted out as a finishing move.
That made me pop. As we go to Eternal Fire, and this song, the Metal Exchange Gallop is in full force with this one. To me, I hear early Freedom Call on this. That just happy, sappy flower power metal, and it's good if you are looking for that. And when I listen to Freedom Call, that's what I want to hear. But when I listen to Beast in Black, not as much. And it's good, but it's just not what I'm looking for from the band. And it's almost like very simple songwriting, almost like naive in a way. Like they hadn't really figured out what this band was going to be because the album is all over the place. It's also slightly repetitive, but it's short. So for that reason, it doesn't really feel, I guess, in many ways like it's overdone. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is my favorite song on the album.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I just think I think that this is definitely a window into album number 2. Just like you said, fast galloping, like heavy keyboards, high vocals. Like it says everything that Beast in Black does so well. I really, really like this song a lot. I think it's very good.
All right. I mean, I don't hear it on this one, but I respect your opinion. But I'm still. This
has been in the back of my head, and I guess now is as good a time as any to mention it. But I'm wondering if the fact that they do not have a live keyboard player, if that's going to make the experience any lesser. I mean, I think of Sabaton as a comparison point because I've seen them with a keyboard player and without, and to be honest with you, I kind of preferred them with, but at the same time,
it made all the difference at Emperor. I'm just saying, there's something about those live keyboards. Yeah,
I just wonder if it's going to matter, if the band's just going to bring so much energy that because there have been bands where the backing keyboard recordings really didn't matter that much, but the keyboards are such an important part of most of this band's library, if not all of it. So I just hope that doesn't take anything away, because it is just thinking of a song like this where there's just these really sweeping big keyboard orchestrations that I don't know, just a little. I just always prefer a live keyboard player. See Power Quest and all those bands that I'm always been a big fan of. It does make a huge difference, especially when the band has such a keyboard-driven sound. So just thought this would be a pretty opportune time to mention that.
I wonder the same. I know that often takes away something for me, but I still have very high expectations. So I guess we will certainly see soon enough. And with that, I'm going to tell you to go to hell and tell me what your thoughts are about this song.
Not a Megadeth cover, as it turns out. It's okay. It's probably towards the bottom of my favorite songs on this album. I don't know that I would give any song on this album less than maybe a 6.5, and this might be hovering right around that area. It's kind of a simplistic chorus, but it's a solid tune. Just not my favorite. It's but as you mentioned of the last song, it's short. It's the shortest song on the album at 3 minutes and 1 second. So even if you don't like it, it'll be over before you know it.
I love it. I think it's a great song. I think it's probably my 3rd favorite song on the album. I kind of outlined my 4 favorites. This would be in the top 3rd for sure. I also hear electronic elements on this, so it's kind of a precursor of what's to come. It's a touch faster, but it's really, really melodic. some cool bass lines, which is not something we've talked about as much, regarding this band, but there's some cool bass lines on this. And when you add those soaring vocals over the top, I think it makes for a really cool song. And I like the way it goes out too. So it's short, you're sweet, you're in, you're out, but it hits all the buttons for me. And then it leads into, and by the way, I should mention, this is the second of the bonus tracks, right? So kind of just sandwiched in there. And then we get towards the back end of the album with the last two tracks, the first being End of the World. And this one is nothing but an epic in the sense that it comes in at over 5 minutes, which for them is, a long song. A Change of Seasons, this is not. But there's this great extended keyboard solo that kind of kicks things off. It has a very futuristic sound to it, and it continues throughout the song in various spots. Very well placed, in my opinion. It belongs on right by the back end of this album. But I think it's just a mid-paced rocker with some cool vocals on the top. I think the drum fills are great too. There's a lot to kind of chew on this one.
Yeah, I like this song quite a bit. It's probably, it might even be tied with Eternal Fire as my favorite song on this album. It just is so epic. Those keyboards really remind me of like that early Sabaton kind of sound where the keys were a little bit more prominent, but just great vocals, great everything. This is just an unbelievable song. I'm a big fan. I argue it probably should have been the last song on the album. They went with more of a power ballad to end things, which they did not do again on the next album, where the power ballad's kind of in the middle. But I think this is a great song. Just very powerful and super catchy. Tap your foot, and it even being the epically long 5+ minutes that it is, it never gets boring for me.
And I think you can say the same thing about Ghost in the Rain, which ends it, right? Because again, very different sound than anything else that comes before it. But at the same time, as much as I enjoyed this song, and I think it is a kind of an interesting way to end the album, I completely forgot about this song. It was like listening to it for the first time, and maybe that's because it was at the end of the album or what have you. But boy, does Giannis show his range on this one. And every time I heard it, I kept thinking the same thing. It reminds me of Serenity, a ballad that Serenity would have done. So I thought it was well done. I think it's a good way to end the album. I'm wondering if you share those same thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have gone with the End of the World as the last song and maybe put this somewhere more in the middle, but it's a solid power ballad, and it just is, and as is a lot of things with this band, but this song in particular, it just really gives a very 80s vibe to me. Like, I just feels like a very 80s radio-friendly, power ballad, and trust me when I say that is not a knock at all. For I love those types of songs, but
and I think you're going to hear a lot more of those coming up. I think that they do it well, to say the least, and we'll certainly get there. But taking a look back, I guess, in terms of a score from 1 to 10, what would you rate this debut album? Because again, it was better than I remembered it, but I just don't think it's nearly as good as the other two.
I have it. It's going to be my lowest of the three, I think. Yeah, it will be. I kind of was struggling between giving it an 8.25 and an 8.5, so I gave it an 8.375. It's a very good album, but it has a couple of weaker songs that I think the second and third albums don't. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with this one.
I'm at a 7.25. I think it's a good album. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think it's as good as the material that would follow. But like I said, it was good enough even years ago to keep me intrigued enough that I wanted to hear more. And in 2019, we definitely heard more from this band. This is an album that even if we hadn't picked it for part of the retrospective on Beast in Black, I think I would have chose this album at some point in the not so distant future, just because this is such an interesting album in so many ways. I'll be honest, not as good as I remembered it. I had this album like going into the week. I'm like, this is a 9.5. It's an all-time great. It's not quite that good, but it's not far off. And it kind of reminds me of that Dynasty album, Renatus, or however you want to say it, just in terms of an album that when I first heard it, I was completely blown away. And I just kept playing it all year, over and over again. This I had a very similar feeling with, and I was curious if it was going to have the staying power that it did even 4 years ago. And I got to be honest, it did. And part of the reason is because these songs are so short. You're in, you're out, and you're on to the next catchy tune. Lots of stuff to sink your teeth into here, and I am a huge fan of this album. Spoiler.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
Should
have led with that.
Yeah, I'm with you. It was a real just mind blower. This was the last year that I was not ranking albums like at least 25 of them. I just remember that year I ranked 5 albums at the end of the year. We hadn't started the podcast yet. And I struggled between this and Glory Hammer's album that had come out that year, which absolutely blew me away. I love that album so much. I think I ended up giving Glory Hammer the number 1 spot, Beast in Black number 2. I believe Majestica's debut album was number 3. Ancient Bard's album from that year was number 4. And Voyager's album from that year was number 5. And I just remember thinking, like, Jesus, these are 5 really fantastic albums. I had such an easy time picking a top 5, and then the rest of it, I think I had like a number 6 through 25 in no particular order, honorable mention sort of deal. But this was definitely, if it wasn't for that Glory Hammer album that I think was just their finest work and just blew me away at the time. I could not stop listening to, honestly, any of these albums. I went back and listened to them repeatedly. I thought it was Ancient Bard's best album. I thought it was Majestica's best album, being that it was their debut. I guess maybe not. I guess if we're going to talk about the Rain Seed albums that preceded them, different conversation, I guess. But and this was just another one that just kind of was incredible, and it holds up in every sense. Every time I go back and listen to it, I never get tired of it. It never gets like any worse. I never feel like I overrated it at any point. Like it just was. I think it's always just going to be one of those great albums.
Well, very well said. Let's jump into it.
Do you think we hyped it up enough, or?
Now, whenever I say a song is mediocre, people are going to be like, then why the hell did you go on it for 10 minutes about how awesome it was? But kidding aside, not many good songs on this album. I think most songs, many of them are great. And it starts off with one of them, Cry Out for a Hero. Immediately, I like this song better than anything on the last album. I mean, like, that's how much I think this song is a perfect way to start the album. The opening riff with the keyboards behind it, it's just absolutely incredible. It's heavy, it's melodic, it's crunchy. Everything about this song is great. And I gotta be honest with you, there's even great guitar solos in this. And there's a few smattered on that first album, but it's like everything came together on tracks like this. And I just find it to be such an easy, enjoyable listen that it just gives me great pleasure.
Well said. Giannis's vocals, he's already cranking out the high notes on the very first track. This is so catchy, and just those like pounding keyboards that are part of it. It's just that beautiful package. And like you said, the first album was a little bit more scattered. I feel like this album seems to have more of a direct vision or a purpose. And it's just a lot more cohesive, I think would probably be the way to put it, which I think the third album is less cohesive, actually. It's more
I agree.
Experimental, and I feel like they're doing, which is, I don't think, a bad thing. It's just different.
Yes, they didn't need to make this album a second time. They did it. It's among the best, and then, retain that sound, but go somewhere else with it.
I absolutely agree with that. I think that they made the right call. it almost, it's like going back to our discussion about Pink Bubbles Go Ape. Like, did we need a Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 3? Or, did we need Pink Bubbles Go Ape to be as disappointing as a lot of people thought it was? I don't know. But yeah, this is really just the perfect song to kind of kick things off. It's just fast paced, kicks your ass, and then it just drops you off at track 2, where I just hear like the intro to like a 80s arcade game, like right before you start to play it, like right before you're like, like Player One Go, Double Dragon, Contra, whatever you want to say.
Could not agree more. To me, this is like the Streets of Rage soundtrack for anyone who enjoyed those Sega games that were kind of like Final Fight-esque. This reminds me of Streets of Rage, and it's got a little bit of a techno quality to it itself. But then once the verses kick in, it just screams like 80s movie. Like, this could have been on the Goonies soundtrack, and I think it would have fit in perfectly. Give me more of this 8 days a week, and I love it. I think the chorus is about as catchy as it gets, even though it's so simple, and I just hope they play it live, because again, I want to sing along to this one as well. Easily could be a song of the week. It's not. It easily could be. But I like how the keyboards give this like ambient vibe to it, and even the instrumental section is kind of cool. But this chorus, man, this is as good as it gets.
Unbelievable song. I don't even think we mentioned the title of it. It's the title track from Hell with Love. Just a catchy ass song. 7.8 million views on YouTube. Can't be wrong.
And the third single off the album, and with good reason. Yeah,
just a really another little less speedy than the first track, but just as powerful and catchy, and just another real just banger of a tune. I just love this album. It's so good.
Well, let's talk about Sweet True Lies. This is the first single from the album, and it actually came out in 2018, so it was, I don't know, I guess a few months prior to the actual album coming out, which was February 8th of 2019. What are your thoughts on Sweet True Lies?
Oh my God, I was like, when this came out before the album and I heard it, I was like, oh God, what happened to Beast in Black? They went Backstreet Boys. But I mean, in all honesty, it's really just that that chorus is so late 90s Backstreet Boys in sync. But I mean, the rest of the song is your run of the mill Beast in Black song. I think this is another really great song. I thought it was a really smart choice actually as their opening single, because I think that it has kind of a universal appeal that maybe somebody who doesn't typically listen to metal might listen to and be like, oh wow, this is pretty cool. So it's a little bit, that part of it, I think it gives it a little bit of a cheese factor, but I don't know. My girlfriend actually walked in and asked me if I was listening to heavy metal Backstreet Boys when I was listening to this song. So
I don't care what anyone thinks. This song is absolutely fantastic. Have you ever heard of the band Love Might Kill?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this reminds me of like a poppier version of something they might have released. That riff makes you just want to bang your head, and maybe you want to bang your head to the Backstreet Boys. I don't know. But this is so catchy, and the riff is so in your face, almost like a modern day Manowar type of thing, but gone pop. It's not really traditional power metal, but I think that there are just touches of it on this. And then, as if it couldn't get any cheesier, the last chorus goes up an octave, which is kind of that gimmick we talked about last week. I don't care. It is cheesy as all hell. Sign me up. I'll make it my song of the week because I want to listen to it again.
Nice. And I guess that means that you can post the music video for it, as there's a full music video clip for it, as long as we're naming numbers. This one has 9.1 million views on YouTube. So here it is. Justin's Song of the Week, Sweet True Lies.
So we get to the next track, which is a little bit different, Repentless, in many ways. It has a bit of a different feel, at least to me. Keyboard heavy for sure. It drives the song like many of these songs are, but in many ways, it almost sounds like there are trumpets or electronic trumpets that are piped in. It's heavier, but it's still certainly melodic. And it's kind of, again, one of those songs that you can listen to without concentrating, but at the same time, it just feels a little different than the prior song. The prior songs that came before it. I have a hard time describing why. Do you think I'm crazy, or is this more of the same?
No, I think you're right. I think it definitely has kind of like that almost royal kingly kind of trumpet. It's obviously, synthesized with this trumpet-esque sound at the beginning, like, a hear ye kind of intro. But just another really just great song. I think it's probably the slowest of the first 4 tracks we've heard so far. But again, it really brings the power. It's like you said, super keyboard driven. I love the guitar solos with the O's. I might be a good live song to play, get the crowd involved, classic power metal style. But just another really good song. Like I've yet to hear a not great song on this album at this point.
It's funny you say that. The first song that I really didn't adore a few years ago was actually the next song, which happened to be, if I'm not mistaken, the second single on the album, called Die by the Blade. For some reason, this song never clicked for me until this week. So while the album is a touch below what I think I had it at maybe 4 years ago, this song I think got better over time, and it reminds me of something that could have been on the Top Gun soundtrack. It is this lush, melodic power metal song where Giannis just shows off his vocal range. The verses are okay, but the chorus just picks up here, and I think that this is a staple in their live sets. I look forward to hearing it live. It's a little repetitive, and for a song that's 3 minutes and 15 seconds, that's saying something, but it's definitely better than I remember it.
I always really liked this song. I remember when it came out as a single, and you know what? I'm gonna just check, because I want to say that it came out. Yes, it came out before the rest of the album. Not by much. It came out a couple of weeks earlier. So they released two songs before the album proper came out. Sweet True Lies being the first. This one reminds me of. I don't know what it reminds me of, but he kind of does like this quiet, high-pitched whisper vocal to kind of kick things off. But then, like you said, the chorus is just so catchy. It just sucks you right in. I really like this song. I remember putting it on a playlist while I was still anticipating the entire album to be released. So this one really, really just I have good memories of this one. And I also feel like it felt more like the Beast in Black that I was hoping for, that Sweet True Lies upon the first couple listens didn't quite evoke for me. But this was like, this the real kick-ass kind of tune I was hoping for. So yeah, I guess we were kind of the opposites with those two songs, where they were late bloomers for respectively.
Yeah, well said. Well said. We get to Ocean Deep, which is a real outlier on this thing. Does this song remind you of anything?
Yeah, it reminds me of like an old Nightwish ballad with like the Oceanborn, something from Oceanborn.
100%. Yeah. And I think that it had to be on purpose, right? Because I hear the same exact thing. The song is called Ocean Deep. This thing could have been on Oceanborn for sure. It's a true ballad, a nice change of pace. Not their best song by any means, but at the same time, it's like a good rest hold. This is like the perfect armbar or like an abdominal stretch, in my opinion. Like it serves its purpose. It gives everyone a chance to kind of catch their breath. And then it ends like a true power ballad in many ways, with a great guitar solo before this really quiet outro. A good song. Not their best, but certainly enjoyable enough and something different for them.
It's interesting because like I had mentioned with the first album that the last song being like the ballad of the album might have been better served in the middle. And if you don't count the two cover bonus tracks, this literally is dead center on this album. It separates the first 5 tracks, which are all bangers, and the last 5 tracks, which are all bangers. And this one it feels like it's a tribute to old Nightwish, while at the same time giving Giannis kind of a platform to really show how high he could sing and how effortless he makes it sound. But it's a solid power ballad. But I would say it might actually be my least favorite song on the album, just because every other song just brings so much energy and is so damn catchy that like this almost, while I think it's necessary that the song is here, I just don't like it as much as everything else, particularly the next 2 songs.
Well, let's get into those next 2 songs. The first of which is Unlimited Sun, and for those that haven't heard the album, come again?
Unlimited Sin.
That's what I said. No, Unlimited Sin. Yes. Well, the ocean is deep, and the Unlimited Sin. This to me is right in line with what they had been doing up until Ocean Deep. It is essentially catchy as all hell, melodic power metal. And you just know that these powerful verses are going to give way to a monster chorus, and I think that that's what this does. To be fair, though, I think that the song after this is even better, and I think that Unlimited Sin is almost a precursor or a setup to True Believer. But I'll let you have the floor and say your piece.
I think this is super, super catchy. I think the kind of like robotic voice that is almost like a little preview of the next album, where you're going to get a little bit more again of that kind of weird experimental electronic roboticness. But this is such a banger song. The keyboard, whatever you want to call it, that kind of leads the way, is such a catchy riff. And this band is just like this. To me, this song just kind of is a perfect opportunity to kind of just say what this band means to me. It feels like a modern power metal band. It brings power metal into the modern age, but while using these thematic 80s thematic kind of vibe, like that those kind of like sweeping keyboard riffs and stuff, like has a very 80s vibe, but yet it sounds modern. And the fact that I really love 80s music and I love keyboard driven music, it just is the perfect marriage for me. And this song is a great example of that. And its only knock is that it's shadowed by, in my opinion, the best Beast in Black song of all time. My favorite song on this album, my favorite song they've ever done. And obviously based on that, it's my song of the week. But True Believer, which I have to believe was a tribute to Stan Lee, just based on some of the lyrical content. But oh my God, this song is so freaking good. If there was one song I want to hear them play live, this is it. I'm not gonna be heartbroken if they don't, because like this is just one of those bands where they can't go wrong. You know, we talked about that, our Sabotage Dream set list on our bonus episode, and we've talked about, Halloween set lists and stuff. And this is just one of those things where it's like, I could make my, ideal set list for this band, and they could play the complete opposite, and I would be absolutely thrilled to hear it. So but yeah, this is my favorite song. Let's listen to it, and I'll be excited to hear what you have to say about it. But oh God, I love this song.
Like the world
think the reason you enjoy this track as much as you do is because the beginning actually sounds like a Nintendo game, like straight out of the 8-bit Nintendo era. And that sound winds up permeating the entire song. And I think that that classic 80 cheese factor is really what does it for you. But that being said, it's this kind of song that separates this album from the debut. And it really, really shows how the songwriting has gone in this separate but intentional direction, which I think is great. Not as heavy as the prior track. I think Unlimited Sin is a heavier track, but at the same time, this song will stay in your head for days. So I challenge everyone out there, listen to this song of the week on Tuesday, and if this doesn't get stuck in your head, I will be shocked.
This song has been stuck in my head for 3 years. No, I'm sorry, 4 years. 4.5 years, actually, if I'm being completely honest. I just remember during my early listens of this album, kind of trying to decide like which songs were really sticking out to me, and the more I listened to it, the more I would hit this song and just be like, shit, like this is just the one. Like it just the way that it builds, it grabs you and it just never lets go. It's just such a killer tune. I love it, and I on a power hour actually laid it over some just like a kind of like a montage of Marvel stuff, because True Believer is always the thing that the late Stan Lee would call his fans as true believers, and the lyric, "You're strong as a beast and you fight like a storm." Like I kind of feel like, all right, I think this is kind of a tribute to Stan Lee. And I'm not even a big comic guy, I just kind of picked up on that those lyrics kind of seem to be heading in that direction, but. I just think it's a great song. It's 3.5 minutes long, and like the only thing I can do is just play it again because it's too short.
Well, we will play it this week as it is your song of the week. But then we get into the first, maybe the second track, which is just a bit of a miss for me. It's called "This Is War." It's a bit slower, and ironically, it kind of is an anthemic call to war in many regards. It's not anything you haven't heard from them. It's good. It's fine. And I actually like the instrumental section, which is this like whimsical, airy sound with lots of woodwind instruments. But for some reason, the song as a whole, kind of a miss for me, just not as memorable as a lot of the stuff that came before it.
Yeah, this is probably the weakest of the
traditional
the 10 heavy songs. Solid. Very good, almost even. But again, like it just like followed up like two real bangers and two of my favorite songs on an album that I absolutely love. So it's kind of in an unenviable position. But also, I think that it's a like well put because I really enjoy the last two tracks before the bonus track. So I think that it's it almost makes for a good kind of like popcorn match placeholder, if you will. Because I think Heart of Steel again brings those like really epic, almost trumpet-esque keyboard sounds at the beginning, and it just feels really just like really royal. And then like it just has like these just this 80s keyboard sound in the verses that it's such a throwback. I just think this is such another really great song, even though it's not really like super fast the way like Unlimited Sin or Cry Out for a Hero was, but still it's just good luck getting it out of your head. It's just another super catchy song. What about you?
Surprisingly not a Manowar cover, but more of a Kenny Loggins tribute than anything else. And to that end, I think it's probably the most underrated song on the album. Nobody talks about Heart of Steel. The song is great. The instrumental section is great, and I love the nod to that 80s sound. And I gotta say, the last proper song on the album, No Surrender, no slouch. This is a heavy rocking tune with a good crunch to it, and it's kind of that toe tapper. Very good verses, great chorus, and the keyboards here give me like a Little Richard quality to them. Yes, I mentioned Little Richard on the Metal Exchange, and there's a bit of an Elton John quality to it as well. This is another gem for me, and I think the album finishes up really strong before we get to two, in many ways, fascinating bonus tracks, at least for me, and I'll tell you why as we get to them.
Yeah, well, the two albums, this and the next album, both have incredibly. I think the third album has even more fascinating choices for covers than this one, and this one's fascinating in and of itself. But the just that like banging piano in this tune that it actually sounds like a real piano and not a keyboard. I think we kind of made mention of that in the Ad Infinitum episode as well. That like it just was such a to hear what sounds like a real piano. I'm sure it's not, but it's such a welcome tune, and it's played in such a the Elton John comparison is really apt, I feel. It's a solid. It's probably towards the back end of my favorite songs on this album, but I mean, that's like saying Jaromir Jagr wasn't as good as Mario Lemieux. It's like
good analogy. I like that.
Yeah, it's like Scottie Pippen on the Bulls.
I wanna just read you my notes on "Killed by Death" because let me just say this: I didn't realize that this was a cover until after. Like, I don't know, maybe yesterday or something like that. I just didn't realize that.
It was a Pretty Made song originally.
Yeah, well, listen to this. So this is what I write about Killed by Death. Quote, an enigmatic intro. Not sure if it's going to be Volbeat or Dokken or Prince. And then it winds up being somewhere in the middle. Quote, the vocals remind me of Motorhead. And then I write some other stuff. I had no idea this was a Motorhead cover. So you know what? A round of applause for Giannis because he actually pulls off Lemmy here, and I had no idea it was a Motorhead song.
I didn't know either for a while. I came to figure it out a couple of years ago, I think, because it felt like such an outlier. I mean, I know the next track better than most songs that exist. But this one I had never heard before. I'm not very well read in the Motorhead arts, but his Lemmy impression is unbelievable. Like, it's so good. It's clearly not Lemmy, but like it sounds like as good of a Lemmy impression as someone's gonna do. It's cool, and it really the way that they add the keys to this, it fits the rest of the album quite well, even though it's a cover. But I just remember thinking that it did feel kind of odd when I first heard the album. I kind of just thought the last track was the one bonus track cover. I didn't realize this was one of them too. So I'm kind of in the same camp as you. But very cool cover and a nice choice for a bonus track.
And it ends with another cover, which is arguably one of my absolute all-time favorite covers by any band, and that's No Easy Way Out. And for those that are saying, what the hell is this? It's a Robert Tepper cover from a movie that we all know and love. Do you want to spill the beans on this one?
Sure. People have called it the greatest movie soundtrack of all time. It's hard to argue. Rocky IV. Came out in 1985. Only reason I've ever heard of Robert Tepper was because of this soundtrack. The original song is incredible from the get-go, and then you have this power metal cover of it. All I remember is that when the day this album came out, and I downloaded it and I saw it in my iTunes, and I saw that was the last track. All I was saying to myself was, please be the cover. Please be the cover. Please be the cover. Because I was going to be pissed if they actually made their own song called No Easy Way Out and it wasn't the cover. And sure enough, it was the cover. I remember the very first thing I did was find it on YouTube and send it to Mike. Like, I was just like, this is awesome. It's my favorite of the the 4 covers on this album and the next, but it's only because I went into the album already loving the song, and now I'm having like one of my new favorite bands do this really ass whooping cover of it. So yeah, just a really killer tune. Really interesting 2 choices for covers: Motorhead and Robert Tepper. The only thing they might have in common, the only thing they might have in common is the time they were released. I'd have to look up when Motorhead's Killed by Death came out. 1984. So they're only a year apart. So I guess there's a little bit of a connection there, as they're both mid 80s songs. But yeah, and I like I always say, like, if you're gonna get killed by death.
Truer words have never been spoken. I am curious for this, since this was not your number 1 album of the year. What are you rating this thing with the benefit of hindsight?
This one, again, I'm stuck between 2 scores. I'm stuck between 9.25 and 9.5, so I'm just going to give it a 9.375, a full point higher than the previous album, which is pretty much where I think I would have had it when it first came out. I might have had it at a 9.5. I think the benefit of time has brought it a little bit back down to earth, but it's still, I think, going to go down as an all-time favorite for me, and I have rated it as such.
Would have been a 9.5 for me, I think, again, going into the week. Now it's a 9, but a really, really solid score. I think this album is incredible. I don't know that they can produce or come up with an album that's better. So if you're going to pick one album of theirs to listen to, I think this should be the one. But I have to admit, as I dove back into Dark Connection, the 3rd album from 2021, better than I remembered it. And I liked it when it came out, but it's actually this one, whereas From Hell with Love went down a trifle, Dark Connection, which came out October 29th of 2021, has probably gone up maybe a quarter of a point in my eyes. This album is really solid too. But again, a little more experimental, a little more all over the place, almost like the debut, but I still think it's more cohesive than Berserker. I'm excited to talk about this one.
Same. Do you recall where this album landed for us on our year-end list, the year that it came out?
So, yeah.
I can easily look it up.
I am just taking a look at the old notes here. This album was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This was, I think, 13 for me, or thereabouts. Very, very.
Yeah, 13. And it was number 3 for me that year.
Okay, so obviously
I liked it.
Yeah, an album we both held in high regard for sure. So let's give it a go. This album kicks off right where the last album left us, and that's with a song called Blade Runner, which is this keyboard laden power metal song that reminds me a lot of early Sonata Arctica. Not the most complex riff of all time, but just really, really solid. The vocals soar over the top, and it's just a banger to kick this thing off. Not my favorite song on the album, but a good opening track.
And it's got those Elton John pianos again. Like it's almost like it picked up right where that last proper track ended on the last album. But yeah, I think that Beast in Black is never going to make an album where the first track isn't just like blowing your socks off right out the gate. It appears that there's a lot of sci-fi series that are referenced on this album, and obviously this one is based on Blade Runner. But just a really, really high energy, the kind of track that you have come to expect and love from this band. So really killer start.
Yeah, and there's no let up with Belladonna, the second track. I would argue it's one of my 2 favorite songs off the album. This one's a little bit more anthemic, not quite as fast, but it could have easily been on the prior album. The vocals here, some of these high notes are just like impossible to hit. I have no idea how Giannis does it. And verses that just grab you, and the word I'll keep using is an infectious chorus. And quite frankly, what makes this song stand out, one of the best guitar solos in their entire catalog. I just love the solo on this song. Really, really good song. I'm happy that it's kind of up front on this album, and it's another track that I think people should hear.
Yeah, and it just has that kind of, that just great mid-tempo kind of chug, if you will. And this band is just, they are not bad at making a catchy ass song. They seem to have figured out how to do that quite well, and this is another one. And again, just a lot of heavy keyboards. Really, I think something about this album kind of gives me a little bit more of an 80s vibe than even the previous one, and I feel like this song is kind of an example of that.
What do you think of Highway to Mars?
I think we need to get on the highway and get going. Again, this is like another one of those like super like just catchy mid-tempo Beast in Black songs. It's got a very deliberate tempo, but it's just so catchy. I love the chorus is just so it's so catchy. I'm just going to keep using the word catchy because that's what it is. I really like this song. I think it's another really good tune. Again, very, very keyboard heavy. But I like this one. Good.
This reminds me of like a modern day Voyager sound. This is kind of what Voyager has been doing the last few albums with those lush keyboards or the keytar, whatever you want to call it throughout. This is a good song and a lot better than I remembered it. I don't remember enjoying this song as much as I did this week. Really cool tune. And I think that it gives way to another upbeat kind of banger of a tune that would be fantastic live. And the song is called none other than Hardcore. This one is really good, except for when they start chanting hardcore. I think that takes me out of it a little bit. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm at an ECW match in 1997, but a little repetitive, but I do like the way the song ends as well. A very good tune, despite its flaws.
I bladed when I listened to it. Yeah, the chorus is a little stupid. I don't know. I don't love it. Of all things, it kind of reminded me of Machine Supremacy. I don't know. I don't know what's happening anymore, but it's my least favorite of the songs thus far. I think the first three songs are a little bit better. It's not a bad song, but I just think the first three songs are better. But Great guitar work in the solos here. I mean, all of the songs typically have really good guitar work, and this one is no stranger to that.
I will say this. I think the big single from the album was, and Hardcore was one of the four, but the big single was One Night in Tokyo, which is the next track. I think this is an overrated song. It's not bad, but it's a bit dry. It has a little bit of like an early 90s electronica feel to it. Could have easily been in a movie soundtrack, but the chorus loses me a bit, and it's just a little flat and repetitive. I challenge you to listen to this song without keys, and I think you would say it's probably a terrible song, but the keys make it listenable. Any thoughts on this song, the single?
The first time I heard it, the first thing I thought of was the Final Fantasy VIII battle music when you were Laguna, not Squall. And it had that kind of techno. It's still to this day one of my all-time favorite video game tracks, and definitely one of my favorite Final Fantasy songs. But kind of just reminded me of that. I like this song quite a bit. It has a really cool music video. The band created a mobile game based on it. I think it's literally called One Night in Tokyo. I really like this song. It's you can tell it was one of the songs that I think they were trying to aim at the general public to try to get more people into it, but it works for me. I like it quite a bit better than the previous song. I just think it's really cool, and I just really like the kind of techno-y electronic elements that are on display here.
All right, I think we disagree on those two, but that's all right. General flavor, I tend to agree with you, and that brings us to the sixth track, which is called "Midnight Rendezvous," and this is one of the two epics on the album at over 5 minutes. This to me is a perfect example of like melodic modern rock at its finest. Almost something that you could hear on the Frontiers label at this point. Just a monster chorus. Nothing new here, but just well done. All you want to do is sing along to that chorus, and I like the lower key change that just kind of precedes the instrumental section, and a very good extended guitar solo. A good track in my opinion, and for someone that didn't like the previous track as much, this is back on track.
Yeah, this was a another one of the singles. This, along with One Night in Tokyo and Hardcore, were the three singles. This was the one that I believe was that came out. I believe this was the first single that came out prior to the album's release, and then I believe One Night in Tokyo was the second single, which I also believe was prior to the full album. I'm just going to verify that information right now. Yeah, Moonlight Rendezvous dropped on September 3rd, 2021. One Night in Tokyo came out on October 3rd, 2021. And the album came out on the 29th of the same month. So those two songs were kind of the two preview singles. I like this one a bit more than One Night in Tokyo. I think it just has more of a, I don't know how you define a classic Beast in Black song, because the band has been in existence for less than some of pairs of socks that I own. But it's just a really good tune. I think it sounds a little bit different than anything they had done before, and I think that was a kind of a cool way is to say like, hey, this third album is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be another real like top to bottom like banger fest like the previous album was. There's going to be a little bit more variation, and I think it's welcome, man. And this song is one of those examples of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely heading back in the right direction. And then we get to another track, which is, I think, underrated in many respects. It's called Revengeance Machine. It's got this very comedic, futuristic intro. I'll just leave it at that for those that haven't heard it. And this is a real banger as well that probably is the other track that could have or should have been on the Streets of Rage soundtrack. The drumming here really moves this thing along, and the vocals are obviously fantastic. A little more power metal on this song than most of the other songs on the album, and I have a feeling you like this one.
Yeah, I do. I don't know if I like it quite as much as the previous two singles, but this one has, I think, more of that fast-paced energy that the band really brings. I like the rest of the song more than the chorus. I think the song on a whole is better than the chorus itself, but another solid tune. And again, I really like the electronic kind of keyboard vibe that they're bringing forth here.
Yeah, I can totally appreciate that. I think that there's better songs on the album, but we will get to those shortly. The next track is called Dark New World. This one is not as bright and as cheery as some of the other songs. I think it's a little darker, which for them is kind of a nice transition in many ways. It's one of those songs you kind of just bang your head to or move to the verses. I think it's some of the best on the album. I don't love the chorus on this. I think it's a little vanilla. It's a little plain. But again, another great solo. And I think that they're really showing off their chops as musicians on this album, probably more so than on the prior album.
Yeah, really well said. I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of the chorus either. I feel like some of the choruses on this album are a little bit weaker, and it kind of brings down the overall experience. Not to not to a point of badness, but just it just I think leaves it a shade under the previous album. But I agree. I like that it's a little bit darker. I think that I'd be interested to see the band kind of explore more of that in the future, because there is kind of a cheeriness to a lot of their songs, and so hearing them get a little dark would be interesting. But did the intro to the Last Drop of Blood remind you?
Oh, absolutely! It has a modern Stradivarius vibe to me.
Okay, I thought of Megadeth.
Interesting.
That guitar intro.
The riff that kicks it off?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It was probably something from Euthanasia or that kind of era or whatever, but just that tone of the guitar reminded me a lot of Megadeth. Just the first couple of seconds. And
so I had a very different feel, I guess, overall, but maybe I'm just kind of thinking of the whole tune as a one big tune. This one is a little bit of a miss for me. I think that the song itself is just, I don't know, something doesn't click. The lyrics are exceptionally cheesy, and the chorus just doesn't resonate. Well placed at the back end of the album, kind of buried in many respects. It's just not my favorite song on the album. Yeah, that's fair. I think the chorus is a bit better than the previous couple of songs. I think this, kind of overall, I like this song a little bit more than the last two. I would say. Interesting. I will respectfully disagree. The next track is Broken Survivors, and I have to say, this thing is one of me again, if it's not my favorite next to Belladonna, it's probably my second favorite song on the album. Giannis is doing his best Geddy Lee impression on this thing, hitting notes that like no man should hit. But at the same time, it's a great song, and it reminds me of something else that could have easily been on like the Rocky IV soundtrack. I think that this song, Broken Survivors, really encapsulates just about everything I love about this band, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone mention this track. I'm curious to know what it is about this song that you don't love, because I felt like this was going to be one you just ate up. I think you may have misunderstood me. Or maybe I said it wrong, but I was trying to say that To the Last Drop of Blood I liked more than the previous two songs. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought you meant the last two songs on the album. Broken Survivors is arguably my favorite song on the album, actually. Great, so then we agree. Okay, so then... There's no weak points. Some of the songs previously, like the chorus isn't as good, or they keep saying hardcore. In this case, this is like, it hits all the right notes. It's catchy. It's actually not like a super fast song. It's actually more of a mid-tempo song, but it's just, they just really have a knack for making mid-tempo songs catchy as hell. And this is one of them. One of my favorite Beast in Black songs, and definitely my favorite song on this album. Yeah, I well said. And I think the album ends with another great tune called My Dystopia. In many ways, I think some of the band's best songwriting are exemplified on these last two tunes on the album. There's a maturity and a growth in the songwriting, which is kind of welcome despite how much I like the last album. Very melodic, really good way to go out. And then, of course, you have these two bonus tracks behind it. But before we get to those, talk to me about My Dystopia. Do you like it as much as I do? Yeah, it's another one of my favorites on the album. I think that... it's a weird album for me. Like it's kind of whereas like the previous album was kind of like one long epic ass whooping with like this one ballad in the middle and like one so track on the second half and everything else just really hits. For me, like this album, it has, like the first three songs really hit for me. Hardcore, not as much. Then the next two I really like. Then the next three are kind of and then the next two I really like. So it's kind of, at least it begins and ends on high notes. But this is another, it's a little bit more ballady than Broken Survivors. I don't know that I'd straight up call it a power ballad, but it is another kind of mid-tempo, has more of a kind of emotional
feel to it. But and again, another just Giannis, tour de force of just unbelievable vocals.
Nice.
Sometimes you almost forget about it because he's just so good at it. You kind of take it for granted, but like the guy is such a vocal beast. So yeah, really great epic keys towards the back end with the solos and everything. Really great song. I thought this was a really good choice to end the non Beast in Black written portion of the album.
I completely agree with you. And then we get to two of the most diverse covers that literally have nothing to do with one another. The
only thing they do have in common is that they're two of the most controversial artists that I've ever had discussions about. Or maybe I don't know if controversial maybe would be the right word for Manowar, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Like a lightning rod of opinions.
Yeah, or just when the people are on two very opposite sides.
Diametrically opposed?
Yeah, something like that.
I'll just keep saying words until I get it right. So that being said, the first cover, Battle Hymn by Manowar, and I always thought this was a bit of an odd choice. I do think it's a cool take on the original. Not my favorite Manowar song. Certainly not my favorite Beast in Black cover. I actually prefer the next track. But please, the floor is yours. Talk to me about Battle Hymn.
I love this. It's
really okay.
It's one of the few songs I really like from the debut Manowar album, Battle Hymns. I think it's easily the best song on that album, and the problem with it is that album is so friggin' old that like everything sounds really tinny and poorly produced. I think it came out in 1982, which was the year I came out. This is like just a modernized version of a really good song, and I think that like actually hearing it done, I'd love to hear Beast in Black do like all the like pre Kings of Metal Manowar songs. I think that they would do them real justice. But I thought this was really a really well done song, and it's arguably the longest Beast in Black song of all time at just under 7 minutes. But I always really like this song, and I think that this cover just gives it a really cool modern spin to it, especially the part in the middle where it's just like just Giannis doing the Eric Adams, high notes or whatever before the guitars and everything kick back in. So super cool cover, and why not follow a Manowar song with a Michael Jackson song?
I am an absolute sucker for a good Michael Jackson cover, and I would point everyone to go listen to Rain Time, the Italian melodic death metal band, for a fantastic Michael Jackson cover. But I digress. This is another one that's in that same vein. They Don't Care About Us, and it's not even like his most famous track, but this is a really awesome cover in my opinion, and it's a modern take on what's otherwise just like a pop classic with this odd Pink Floyd quality to it, which really just makes everything even spacier than it otherwise is. I like this song. I think it's a really cool way to end the album, and I love when there's covers for bonus tracks of artists that you just wouldn't expect to associate with the underlying band, and I think that is absolutely what Beast in Black and Michael Jackson have done here.
Yeah, I almost feel like this was an excuse to show that Giannis could sing like as well as Michael did with those like that natural, just high vocals. But the beginning of the song, he almost has like this raspiness that's really
as he's almost rapping in many ways.
Yeah, you don't really hear him do that kind of. I mean, maybe when he's doing Motorhead covers, but like it's interesting. I had forgotten about this song, and I did a little digging on it, and it was a pretty controversial song because there were some ethnic slurs in it against Jewish people and a lot of people had accused Michael Jackson of being anti-Semitic and there's some stories. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert in the area, but I was surprised because Michael Jackson went back and re-recorded the song and took out some of the lyrical content that was controversial, and Beast in Black went with the original lyrics, which I thought was interesting. Maybe they didn't even realize it, but I just thought that was really interesting. But Michael Jackson did catch a lot of flack for the lyrics, and that even if he wasn't trying to be offensive, whatever message he was trying to get across was kind of a miss, I guess, in the way that it was presented. But beyond that, it's a really powerful song. Spike Lee directed there were 2 music videos for the song, and he directed both of them. And Michael Jackson had a lot of really I'm struggling to find the words, but I don't know if movement is the right word, but just he was very he wasn't shy about writing songs that were hard hitting and cause oriented. That's what I was trying to think about. But beyond the meaning of the song, I just think that the classic Michael parts, those high like oohs or whatever, like, oh my God, Giannis just nails it. And I thought this was a really bold choice of a cover, and they really nailed it. And I totally get why you like it as much as you do. I like it a lot too.
Well said. I don't have anything else to say other than I look forward to seeing this band live. Keyboards be damned, I still think it's going to be a great show, but we would be remiss not to rate Dark Connection, their most recent release. For me, it's an 8.0. I think it's markedly better than the debut, but I think it's not nearly as good as their second album. But at the same time, I am so eager to hear their next release whenever that is due out. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see what direction they go in. What does this album kind of rate for you?
I have it at a 8.5. I think it's a bit ahead of the first album, but it's a bit lower than the second one. It's still very good. It's just following up a real heavy hitter album. But I think they're trending in the right direction. I'm looking forward to the next album, and this was a really great discussion. I'm so excited to see this band live, and I didn't think I could be more excited, but now that I'm reminded of how many songs from the first album that I love and forgot about, I'm even that much more excited. So great stuff, and it seems like we were kind of in the same place, just I was a little bit higher than you on the 3 albums, but we kind of agreed on where they rank against one another. So, fun discussion, but I'm looking forward to only having to talk about one album next week.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work, and we'll get to that one album in a second. I just want to mention 2 other news items before we get to next week. I thought this was really interesting. Anyone who's listened to Volbeat knows that Michael Poulsen is not only their guitar player, but their singer. He has started a death metal side project, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. The band is called As in Hell, and that's one word, As in Hell. They were signed to Metal Blade Records and are coming out with an album on September 29th. He does not sing. He just writes the music and plays the guitars, and he had somebody come in and actually sing death metal vocals. But it's interesting because Volbeat is all over like XM radio with their songs, and they've obviously opened for Metallica a number of times, and they're really very, very popular. But as a creative outlet, the singer has decided to go in this different direction. I'll try to post a song this week. It's really, really interesting stuff. So something to keep an eye on. And another favorite of the Metal Exchange, Angra, has signed with Atomic Fire Records and has announced their new album, Cycles of Pain, due out November 3rd. Needless to say, I'll be listening to that the day it comes out. I'm always a sucker for new Angra material, and I think they actually mentioned that they're going to play this album in its entirety on 70,000 Tons of Metal, and even film a music video for a future DVD release of this album on the high seas. So that should be a lot of fun.
Also, the album cover is really, really, just really nice looking. Really well done. So something to look forward to. I enjoyed their last album quite a bit.
Yeah, and finally, the Halo Effect will be completing their mix of their second album in the coming days. It sounds like they are nearly done with their next album, but that is not what we are going to be talking about next week. What we will be talking about next week is their debut album, Days of the Lost, which came out just a couple of years ago. They are playing Prog Power this year. They are playing 70,000 Tons of Metal next year. So I figured, what better way to go forward with our journey than to talk about a little In Flames, a little Halo Effect, and all things related to this Swedish melodic death metal band.
Yeah, I think I had mentioned last week, I listened to the album a couple of times last year. It was one of the most talked about albums that came out last year. Definitely one of the most talked about debut albums. I remember liking it, but didn't listen to it enough to really sink my teeth into it. So I'm looking forward to kind of having a second chance with this, and I presume a good portion of this will be part of their set list. So if it's a hit for me, then I'll be in the crowd watching them come day 2 of Prog Power. But yeah, again, like I said before, looking forward to only listening or only talking about one album, because we are coming up on close to 2 hours on this marathon episode. So
I will leave you with this thought. Number one, I think you're going to enjoy the album even more than you remembered it. I actually did, at least upon my first listen. And number two, if you like what you hear, give us a like and a follow. We would appreciate it. It helps others find the show. And we will come back to you next week with a much shorter episode as we cover the debut album from the Halo Effect. So, Chris, enjoy the week, my friend. Thanks for taking this journey down memory lane with all these recent Beast in Black albums, and I will catch you next week when we talk about some Swedish melodic death metal.
I look forward to it. I think I may actually not listen to Beast in Black again until Prog Power and just kind of recharge up my excitement. But I feel like I may have got close to the border of killing Beast in Black from by death this week. So I might have to take a little bit of a reprieve and start getting into some of the weirder stuff like Halo Effect and Bola. So
I like it.
Yeah, away we go.
Enjoy the week, my friend. I will talk to you soon.
All right, take care, buddy.